Welcome to session 0 of System 31 Live, Realistic Expectations. This is, of course, about realism and reality and about expectations and their much bigger role than you might expect. Different people have said different things about reality. So, for example, Ayn Rand said, we can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. We can eat unhealthily, but we can't ignore becoming unhealthy. You might not water your plants, but you cannot ignore them dying. You might neglect friendships, but you cannot ignore the disappearance of your friendship. So this shows how strongly reality can impose its effects on us, and that is the key point here. Philip K. Dick said something else. He said, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away, which is interesting, and it focuses on an issue like, for example, how does money get value? We all believe that money has value and therefore it has value. When we stop believing it, it's just paper. It's the same with a country. In 1991, we all stopped believing that the Soviet Union was a country, and therefore it wasn't a country anymore. The land was still there, but the country was gone. Same with friendships. If you stop believing in the friendship, there is still the person, but no friendship. Albert Einstein said, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And he focuses on the fact that we create reality as much as it is out there somewhere. So we create an illusion of reality and we interact with that illusion, and it tells us whether the illusion is correct or not. But it won't go away, it is always at the back. Other people said something about expectations, and already for a long time. For example, Confucius said, the expectations of life depend upon diligence. The mechanic that would perfect his work must first sharpen his tools. And he focuses on the fact that you first have to develop your effectiveness in dealing with the world. Leonardo da Vinci said something like, experience never errs. It's only your expectations that err by promising themselves effects such are not caused by your experiments. So what he says is that every interaction with reality is like an experiment. And reality simply does whatever it does, and it doesn't care about what your expectations. So it's our expectations that are wrong. It's never reality that is wrong. Richard Feynman said, it doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is, it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it is wrong. And this can be generalized. It doesn't matter how much you believe your beliefs. Whenever they conflict with reality, reality will prove you wrong. So, realistic expectations versus unrealistic expectations lead to completely different environments. So in one environment you can do dangerous things that work out. In another, when you have unrealistic expectations, you do dangerous things and they don't work out. So with realistic expectations, you gain control over your own destiny, and with unrealistic expectations, you lose control over your own destiny. And we can couple that to our worldview. And what is a worldview? It is all that is taken as a basis for interaction with the world. So hence, a worldview is the set of all your expectations of the world. And that holds not only for humans, but also for animals, for plants, and so all have to interact with the world, and in some sense they all have a worldview. So let's look at worldviews. So we can have realistic worldviews, we can have worldviews that have unrealistic aspects, and we can have unrealistic worldviews. So if your worldviews are mostly or completely realistic, then your plans work out. You can solve or avoid problems, and you live in a world of opportunities, not a world of problems. If your worldviews contain some or important unrealistic aspects, then your plans never are fully realized, and you create as many problems as you are solving. And hence you live in a world of problems and opportunities, and that is something that is probably very recognizable. The worst case is that if the worldviews are really unrealistic, then your plans fail consistently, you create or worsen your own problems, and hence you live in a world of problems. So with realistic worldviews, you can aspire for happiness, self-actualization and development. But when you have unrealistic aspects in your worldview, then you have a so-so life, it feels unrewarding, and you might think, is this it? And with unrealistic worldviews, there is basically only misery, mental health issues and such for you. So the direction of preference is very clear. We need realistic worldviews. And that separates a world of opportunities from a world of problems. And this is something that appears in our research on soundscapes, but if you generalize that, it applies completely. The appraisal of reality, or appraisal where we originally developed it, the appraisal of the soundscape. And that led to two important dimensions. One is the horizontal dimension, is the difference between unpleasant and pleasant, or unviable and viable, this thing that we want to avoid. And the other dimension is a world that is uneventful, in which you can deactivate yourself, or a world that is eventful, where a lot happens and where you have to be activated to figure out what to do now. And we discovered that there are actually two more dimensions that are hidden in the basic dimensions that are turned around by 45 degrees. And those indicate either few options or many options, and the other axis is low complexity versus high complexity. So in a low complexity environment, it is easy to select your own behavior. Basically, it doesn't matter so much what you do. In a high complexity environment, it makes a lot of difference what you do. And hence, you can only select a few from all the possible behaviors that are open to you. So, looking at a world of problems, then there is something that you can define as a coping trap. And a coping trap is described as follows, where when your solutions to problems lead to new or more problems that need new solutions, that lead to new or more problems, that etc, etc, etc. This is a coping trap. Your solutions lead to more problems, require more solutions, etc. And it locks you in a world of problems. On the other hand, we can define something that we named adequacy. And adequacy is the ability or skill to solve daily problems quickly and effectively, or to avoid most problems altogether. And when you're adequate, then you live in a world of opportunities. So let's put that in the picture that we now call core cognition, because it is again applicable to pretty much all of life. So when you're in a coping trap, it is a sign of your inadequacy, your inability, for your own fault or some other fault, to escape from the pathological side, from the difficult side, from the problem side. And on the other hand, we have adequacy, and adequacy will not prevent you from ending up in problems now and again, but you will be able to solve the problems, or even better, to avoid the problems, and hence you have a great sense of happiness and health. This has a lot to do with the basic structure of emotions as well, and those emotions are often called action readiness. They are associated with this picture, so you can live in a useless world of few options, or in a useful world with many options. You can in a safe world with low complexity, or in a problematic world with high complexity. And this is associated also to a number of basic motivations. So we try to avoid an environment with few options. We try to end a problematic environment, we aim for, not always but often, to new and unexplored options, and we try to maintain an environment that is safe and of low complexity. So going back to society, so if we look at the worldviews of society, we can say that our current society has a lot of unrealistic aspects, because society avoids few problems but is very good in problem solving. That is the counter side of it. Its members are often confronted with problems, okay, and societies therefore develop only part of its potential. In principle, we could have something that you call the healthy society. Then society prevents most problems by living within its means. Its members can contribute responsibly and productively, and hence society develops its full potential. But the other thing, a pathological society, is also possible, where the worldviews of society are unrealistic, in which society creates its own problems and solves only few, and its members are continually in problematic situations, and hence society hardly develops its potential. So the not completely rhetorical question is normal good enough? Is a normal society the society that we know now, is that good enough? And that's an exercise to the reader. So let's apply this to the media, because the media inundates us with a background of noise, of information, etc., that enriches us, misleads us, wastes our time, and also provides lots of enjoyment, of course. So let's see. If I look at the media, and especially the mainstream media, then I see many unrealistic aspects. One thing is that most of the media is bite-sized. It's easy to digest. It is incredibly disrespectful, not in a very overt way, but it is disrespectful for the best sources of knowledge available. It's written by journalists that spend only little time and don't have much time to write an article, so they Google a bit, they write a bit, and that's it. But it's completely disrespectful for the highest quality of knowledge on any topic available. It is often subculture specific, so it is liberal, it is conservative, it is whatever. It is superficial, one-sided. It typically develops echo chambers, or is part of an echo chamber, or is the result of someone in an echo chamber saying something. Often it's sloppy, incomplete, imprecise, fragmented, inconsistent, and almost always context deprived. So that is how I see the mainstream media. That doesn't matter that there are sometimes absolutely excellent articles within the mainstream media, and therefore we have that broad Gaussian shape around it. So better than mainstream would be media that has more realism. It is more in depth. It is respectful of the best sources of knowledge. It is consistent with itself. It is contextualized and so put in the proper context where it is actually true. It is precise. It enhances your understanding. It's aimed at that, at least. It offers multiple perspectives. It is deeply educational. It helps you to be self-critical, and it helps you to challenge your assumptions. But we also have, of course, worse than mainstream media. Blatant propaganda. All kinds of comfortable lies, stuff that you like to hear but are definitely not true. All kinds of superficial celebrities talking about things they really don't know anything about. It can be intentionally misleading, like much of advertisement. It can erode understanding. It can gaslight you. Gaslighting means that it erodes your own confidence in yourself to make proper judgments. It can be plain wrong. It is often self-affirming, so it's typically you read the stuff that you would like to read, and it's full of advertisements that have a role completely other than your improvement. It basically wants to make money off of you. So this is then, I would say, our media landscape, and we as a society we have a choice. We can move more to the anti-realistic side or more to the realistic side, and now we are somewhere in a weird place, somewhere in the middle. Going back to Confucius, the expectations of life depend upon diligence, he said. But your world's view also depends upon diligence. And that is the basic tenet of this course. All cognition arises through and from interactions with the world. So you learn from interactions with the world. And in order to learn, you have to expose yourself to a broad and very diverse set of influences. And you have to study them. You have to understand what the hell is happening here. And you have to do it all by yourself. So you have to play and you have to self-reflect. And that drives the learning process. But it also is pretty problematic. It's not easy. So our individual worldviews, what we ideally would like is that they develop from pathological, if you are in a particular state, to normal, which is more common of course, to optimal. And if you are optimal, you want to remain in optimal. And then, well, if you create a realistic individual worldview, you can prevent most of your problems while living within means. You can contribute responsibly and productively to society, and you can develop your full potential. However, normally it would be you can avoid few problems, but you're very good in problem solving. And you are often confronted with problems, and you can only develop part of your potential because you're so much busy solving problems. And with an unrealistic or pathological worldview, you create your own problems and solve you. You're continually in a problematic situation, and you hardly develop your potential. So that is the thing that you really would like to avoid, and by improving your worldviews, you actually can. So what? Well, realistic worldviews are really, really important. And your mental model of reality can always be improved. With high realism, you live in a structured and predictable world. And whatever you more or less expect is more or less realized. So you can take responsibility. But with low realism, you live in a random and unpredictable world. And it is impossible for you to take responsibility because there is no relationship between the things that you do and the outcome in the world. So hence, how could you take responsibility? But you're often disappointed in self because you try so hard and you hardly ever really succeed. So you fail more than you want and more than you think is good. So that leads to mental health issues, basically like also in the form of a lack of trust in yourself, in a deep, maybe unnoticed, but very deep lack of sense of trust in yourself. So where, as a society, are we going to, and where, as an individual, are you going to? Well, there is nothing that blocks you from developing more realistic worldviews. But the world doesn't make it very easy to develop those realistic worldviews as well. So the main message for today is that you maybe should strive to make your worldviews ever more realistic. So this is the graphical summary of today. So our example was the media landscape. We addressed sustainability, development, thinking, feelings, oppositions, the quadrant of the day, and we concluded that there is a difference between the idea of the world and how the world actually is, and that is a source of great troubles. So I hope to see you at the Trends That Shape the Future, the next section. And these were the references for today, and they are also in the description.